The reading comes from our hymnal, reading number 661. These are the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, "The heart knoweth." We have a great deal more kindness than is ever spoken. The whole human family is bathed with an element of love, like a fine ether. How many persons we meet in houses whom we scarcely speak to, whom yet we honor, and who honor us. How many we see in the street, or sit with in church, whom, though silently, we warmly rejoice to be with. Read the language of these wandering eye-beams. The heart knoweth. When I began thinking about my theme this morning, when I began developing the ideas for this sermon, I have to tell you I imagined delivering it in a different context. The basic idea I wanted to play around with was something like this. There is a part we do not know of every person we meet. It is the idea found in the expression, "You never know what someone else is going through." There is a part we do not know of every person we meet. That also applies to the stranger on the street and to the people we know only casually in community, and it even applies to those with whom we are closest and most intimate. There is a part we do not know of every person we meet. And my sermon was going to be about how we might respond to this truth. And I was going to say that we ought to respond to this truth with humility, with forbearance, and even with curiosity. I was going to recommend that we might even follow the words of Emerson. We can honor that part of someone else we do not know. We can warmly rejoice in them. And we can even, amidst all that we do not know, attune our hearts to one another. The heart can know, even though we may not know everything about another person. And then this week happened. This idea was percolating, was marinating in my mind as I went about my life this past week. And as I went about my life going to the store and passing people on the street and seeing people at pickup at school, I found myself doing a little bit of what Emerson described. I found myself reading the language of these wandering eye-beams. I found that phrase, reading the language of these wandering eye-beams, so excellent and juicy. I found, as I paid attention to myself, that as I encountered other people, whether stranger or acquaintance or community member, that I could do a couple of different things in my own mind. One thing that I could do was to regard this person as a danger or as a threat. I could respond to that part I did not know with fear. Maybe a wandering eye-beam has caught your eye this past week, and you've felt that sense of fear or danger from another person. Another possibility, though, was to regard others with curiosity and compassion. Began to wonder, so what is this person feeling? What emotions is this person going through? Fear? Stress? Are they worried about a particular loved one? Are they under family stress? We can respond to the part we do not know with a sense of compassion, or we can respond to the part we do not know with a sense of hostility and fear. This sermon was actually inspired by a story that happened to me several years ago when I was serving in my previous church. It's a story I never thought I'd tell in a sermon until I shared it with a member of this church a few weeks ago. And that member of the church, his eyes brightened and he blurted out, "You should preach that story, Tom." I demurred. I told him I wasn't sure, and he said, "Oh no, you should." So I will. The story took place many years ago when I was serving in another ministry in another part of the country. I had gone out to a local sports bar to watch a sporting event. At the bar, I found myself sitting next to a man who was perhaps a decade and a half older than I was. And we were there watching the sporting event and beginning to chat casually, as people do. I asked him, "What do you do?" And he answered that he was a psychologist. He then asked me what I did, and I answered that, of course, I'm the minister of a Unitarian Universalist church. And when I said that, he let out a great big laugh and slapped the bar and said, "Oh, I have something to tell you." I was meeting with a psychologist colleague of mine, and she was telling me that she often sends her patients to your church. I stared at him. I was pretty sure he was violating some sort of HIPAA regulation. Then he turned to me and began to explain that this psychologist that he knew, she worked with people with social anxiety, and as part of their treatment, as part of their healing, when they got to a specific point of being able to test, that one of the places that she found to send her patients was to go to the Unitarian Universalist Church. I just stared at this guy as the gears in my mind slowly processed what he was telling me. Then in this silence, not quite knowing how to respond, he said one more thing. She said she sends them to your church because you're the most welcoming and accepting community she can think of. It seems your community has a reputation of being really good at welcoming people, and welcoming people who struggle to connect. I didn't know what to say to that. In about our 2 minutes of conversation, this total stranger had turned my worldview upside down. I had really no idea what to say in reply. The conversation just sort of trickled away from that point on. But in my mind, something had flipped. I had always thought, oh, people must come to church to hear me preach. And here this person was saying that, oh, there's people who visit, who are there to work on some part of themselves that you may not even know about. This chance encounter reminded me of something that is existentially true. We never know what exactly someone else is going through, what someone else is struggling with. There is a part we do not know. And this ought to elicit in us a sense of humility and curiosity and forbearance. The part I was struck by was this sense that something that had been happening around me in my life was something that I had no knowledge of. I'm not sure I'm describing this well, but there was something in my life that was more than meets the eye. There is a part that we do not know. You never know what someone else is going through. During times of disruption, times of disaster, times of upheaval, there's always the opportunity for individuals and societies to respond constructively, with hope. And during times of disruption and disaster and upheaval, there's also the chance for individuals and societies to respond fearfully, even destructively. These can be moments of human triumph or moments in which we practice inhumanity. On one hand, there's the author Rebecca Solnit. In her 2009 book, A Paradise Built in Hell, she describes the human potential to respond to natural disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes, and even to terrorist attacks, with shared purpose, shared resolve, and even a joyful and determined spirit. There is a sense in which we share. We have a sense that we're all going through the same thing, and that actually brings us together. On the other hand, in his most recent article in the New York Times, columnist David Brooks delves into history to show how responses to pandemic diseases often lead people to act inhumanely. Brooks talks about how crucial it is to fight the moral disease of our inhumanity, our potential inhumanity towards one another, even at the same time as we fight the physical disease. In society, we've seen a bit of the negative. There have been stories of a rise in xenophobia and acts of anti-Asian racism, for example, in response to COVID-19. But we're also beginning to see people respond to crisis by putting their best selves forward. These include the researchers and scientists working overtime to understand and respond in the hopes that their efforts and their wisdom will save lives. These include the healthcare workers, of which we have a number in our congregation, who are and will be on the front lines of saving lives. May we love one another. May we know that there is a part of every other person that we do not know and may never know. And may we respond to that not knowing. May we meet those wandering I-beams that Emerson spoke of with a knowing of the heart, with compassion, curiosity, and humility. I love you. I'm with you. Amen.